The GREEN Act, short for Growing Renewable Energy and Efficiency Now Act of 2021, was introduced by Representative Mike Thompson on February 4th, 2021, and this bill could provide tax credits for new and even some used electric vehicles in the near future. So there's some things you should know if you're looking at buying an EV in the near term, especially from Tesla and GM. So I'll talk about what is being proposed in this bill, as well as where it's at in the whole legislative process, and then finish up with my thoughts on whether or not you should wait to buy an electric vehicle till these tax credits are available. So this bill is all focused on amending the existing tax code to extend this tax credit to more vehicles. Keep in mind here, I'm only going to be focusing on battery electric vehicles. Plug-in hybrids are also eligible for this credit. It just gets a little bit more complicated because they lower and adjust the credit based on the battery size in those plug-in hybrids. So if you want to see a full list of vehicles that are eligible, I'll have a link down in the description to check that out. So how it works right now is the maximum allowable credit for a new EV purchase is $7,500. Once a manufacturer sells 200,000 vehicles, they enter a phase-out period beginning the second quarter following the calendar quarter where they sell their 200,000th vehicle. And during that phase-out period, the tax credit is adjusted by 50% for the first 2 calendar quarters of the phase-out period, 25% by the third and fourth calendar quarters of the phase-out period, and 0% for any calendar quarter after that. So for example, if we look at Tesla, they sold their 200,000th eligible vehicle in July of 2018, which is quarter 3 of 2018, and their phase-out period started January 1st, 2019, which is Q1 of 2019. So the tax credit was $3,750 from January 1st through June 30th, and then it drops to $1,875 from July 1st to December 31st of 2019. And then it went away completely on January 1st of 2020. So this GREEN Act would reinstate that tax credit for manufacturers that had gone over 200,000 vehicles sold, but with a few changes. First, they are proposing to add a phase-out period. So once a manufacturer hits 200,000 vehicles sold, that tax credit drops by $500 for the next 400,000 vehicles. So in between 200,000 vehicles sold and 600,000 vehicles, the max credit would be $7,000. And then once you hit that 600,000th vehicle sold, you enter that same phase-out period. So it would drop by 50% for the first 2 calendar quarters for the phase-out period, 25% for the third and fourth calendar quarters, and then 0% after that. So basically this means the max credit is $7,000 between that 200,000 and 600,000 vehicles sold mark. This bill was also written to include an exclusion period, so any vehicles sold after that 200K mark up to the enactment of the GREEN Act are excluded from that total 600K number. This transition period really only affects Tesla and GM, as they're the only manufacturers that have crossed over that 200K vehicles sold mark. So it looks like if this bill is signed into law, then any purchaser of a Tesla or GM vehicle for another 400,000 vehicles will be eligible for that $7,000 tax credit. The GREEN Act is also proposing to amend the tax code to include a credit for used vehicle purchases, but there are a lot more stipulations with this credit. So the credit for used vehicles would be $1,250, and if the battery capacity exceeds 4 kilowatt hours, an additional $1,250 plus $208.50 for each additional kilowatt hour over 4. This credit also has a limit of 30% of the sale price of the vehicle. The credit is also reduced by $250 for each $1,000 your gross taxable income goes above $30,000 for an individual, or $60,000 for a joint filing. There's also some stipulations on the vehicle itself. The model year of the vehicle has to be 2 less than when you acquire the vehicle. So if you're looking at a vehicle in 2021, it has to be at least a 2019 or earlier. And the vehicle also has to have a price of less than $25,000. So the maximum total credit here is 30% of that $25,000 limit, which is $7,500 again, but that reduces as your taxable income goes up. So for example, you make $50,000 and you are buying a $25,000 used EV, you are still eligible for a $5,000 tax credit on a used vehicle, which is pretty amazing. So when will we know if this bill is passed? Well, it was introduced on February 4th of 2021, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, and it's been referred to the House Committee on Ways and Means. So they're currently looking through it, seeing what's up with it, if they want to make any changes, possibly propose any amendments. But once they make a decision, they will release it and put it on the calendar to be voted on, amended, or debated on the House floor. So right now it's still in the very early stages of the legislative process in Congress. It hasn't even been voted on or even brought to the floor yet, and we're not sure exactly when that will be. And even if it is brought to the floor to be voted on and passes, it's still got to go through the whole Senate process. And if it passes there, then it is signed into law. So there is a long road ahead for the bill still. And we really don't know how long that whole process is going to take. So what does all of this mean, and should you wait to buy an EV till this tax credit is possibly in effect? Well, first off, I'll say that this proposed tax credit amendment really only affects Tesla and GM. So if you're not looking at a Tesla or GM vehicle, I would say go for it on buying an EV. This tax credit is still in effect for a lot of vehicles out there. Like I mentioned earlier, I've got a link down in the description to all of these vehicles, what their tax credit availability is. It's all in the link down below. But if you are looking at a Tesla or GM vehicle, this makes the decision a lot tougher. I know when I was looking at buying a Tesla, I definitely wanted that max tax credit. Unfortunately, I was only able to get the $1,875 during that phase-out period. But I know if there was a bigger tax credit coming, that isn't something I wanted to miss out on and probably would have waited a little bit longer. Also, there's no retroactive tax credit being proposed right now, meaning if you bought a car right now, a Tesla or GM car, then you're probably not going to be able to get this tax credit if it does eventually pass and become a law. Also, keep in mind, this is a tax credit. I went pretty in-depth on this on the Biden administration video where I talked about his plan for EVs, but this is a tax credit, not a tax deduction. So basically, this is not a discount on the purchase price of the car. This comes as part of your tax return. It just reduces the amount that you owe on taxes. So if you don't owe a ton on your taxes and are looking at buying an EV, you might not even be able to take full advantage of this tax credit. For the used credit, I think it is an awesome addition to this bill. I think that's definitely something I would have waited on if I had a reliable car and wasn't looking at buying a new car right away. The used EV market is pretty small right now, but there are a lot of good options out there, especially if you just need a car for getting around town or making short trips. An EV is an excellent option. And there are lots of good ones out there for under $25,000, even under $15,000 in some cases. Obviously, this all depends on your own situation, but honestly, I think if you can wait it out a little bit and kind of see how this bill progresses, depending on where you're at in your car buying process, it might be in your best interest to wait it out a little bit. You can also track the status of this bill on the congress.gov website, all of that linked down below as well. Right now, it's just in that introduce stage, like I mentioned earlier, but you'll be able to see if it gets put up for a vote, if it gets passed in the House, kind of the whole process of this bill getting written into the law. So bottom line here, I think it really depends where you're at in the car buying process. I think if you can wait 6 months to a year to buy an EV, or you're still very early in the purchasing process, I think it's definitely in your best interest to wait. But if you're like, I want an EV right now, then I would say go ahead and go for it. I don't think there's any sense in waiting 6 months or even a year if you are ready to buy a new car right now and have already done all the financial calculations you need to do. I really don't like telling people to wait on buying an EV, but I think in this situation, this giant potential tax credit could help a lot of people out if you are looking at buying one. That is all for this video. I wanted to include the CARS Act as well, but that is still in the very, very early stages of the legislative process. It's only really been drafted up right now. It hasn't even been officially introduced in the Senate, but that also has some proposed changes to the federal tax credit. So once that is officially introduced, I can do a video on that as well. If you'd like me to, just drop a like on this video so I know you want to see that. But definitely exciting times to be a potential EV owner. There's definitely a lot of support that is coming to these vehicles, and I think there's bound to be something passed eventually that kind of either reinstates this tax credit or extends it a little bit longer for Tesla and GM. So excited to see what happens. I will definitely keep you guys updated. Thank you again so much for watching. That's all for this one. I will see you in the next one.